What it do, my people? What it is another episode of Culture Up Podcast. I'm sitting here with a good homie of mine, Brett, and we are at Castle and Key today. Oh, my bad. Here we go. Last episode we were at Kentucky Gentleman Cigar Lounge in Cap City Cigar Lounge. It was a awesome episode with Tony and Cody. Had a really good time with those guys. Got to smoke some really good cigars and stuff. I don't know if you've ever been down there, but they got some pretty cool cigars and stuff going on.
Yeah, we actually do a couple collaborations with them. They do like a rye whiskey cigar for us and a Castle and Key bourbon cigar, and they're killer. Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what's up. So, another like duo project here in Frankfurt. If you haven't checked them out, please go down to Cap City Cigar Lounge and go check out some of those cigars. But we're gonna get into today's episode. This is a beautiful part of Frankfurt. It's I guess Franklin County, right?
So we're in Woodford County with a Franklin address.
I mean,
yeah.
it is like on the line being.
Yeah, so if you go down this road here 300-400 yards, you'll be in Franklin County.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're at Castle and Key. I'll let you kind of introduce yourself and who you are with Castle and Key.
Yeah, so my name's Brett Connors. I've had the fortune of being our head blender for a few years now, and have been involved with the project really dating back to about 2016. So here kind of since the inception, getting this place back up to life again. So I work on everything from product strategy to finishing our finished good projects. I do some like media PR work like what we're doing today, and have the opportunity to kind of like proselytize the history and the quality of the site. So
Man,
it's
so
cool.
You do a little bit of, you get to experience a little bit of everything here.
Yeah, I think I'm spoiled. I've been here really as one of the first employees, so I now have the opportunity to share kind of the work that all of our team puts together. So I'm very fortunate.
Awesome. So Castle and Key, for those of y'all that don't know, this is a bourbon distillery, correct?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we're a bourbon distillery in Kentucky, you gotta be. But we do some other cool products too, like gin, vodka, rye whiskey. So definitely a really interesting portfolio for a bourbon distillery in the heart of central Kentucky.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that because I know during 2020, y'all even got into like hand sanitizer there for us.
Yeah, I never want to do that again. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, I think that was, yeah, I would never say we're a hand sanitizer distillery, but
no, not at all.
I think the need, we had some like local groups, and like hospitals and stuff reach out to us with the demand being so high for hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
And we wanted to keep our staff employed as long as we could, so we jumped in to the hand sanitizer production game for a little bit, which is a lot less fun than you think it was. But no, yeah, first and foremost, I think, yeah, we're here to make whiskey, and I would rather never make hand sanitizer again in my life. So.
I completely understand that. So Castle and Key, like you said, the edge of Franklin County and Woodford. This location that we're in now, this is a historic location right here, I would say, right?
Yeah, so the distillery is really interesting in a lot of ways, where it dates its original inception back to really the beginning of the 1800s. So in Deed Book A of Woodford County, there's reference to a mill being transacted here that had a distillery associated to it. So back in the day, whiskey was a preservation tactic for your farmers.
Right.
We also didn't have a lot of cash in Kentucky at that time, so most things were going to be trade and bartered, or kind of like that more barter economy. So you would have been milling your grains for your neighbors. They would have been paying you in grain. You could, just from an economic standpoint, you would convert that grain into distillate because it was easier to transport, and you could trade that for other goods and services. So the old McCracken Mill would have been on the kind of south side of this property along Glens Creek in around 1819-ish. And then we see a small commercial distillery develop here in the 1860s. And then the real growth of what you kind of see around us in the modern era was attributed to another Frankfurt legend, E.H. Taylor Jr.
Yeah.
So E.H. Taylor Jr. Purchased the distillery and joined with his sons in 1887 and just blew it out, like expanded it dramatically and kind of made it the first step on the bourbon trail back in the 1890s. This was really the kind of the birthplace of bourbon hospitality.
That's what's
So,
up.
yeah.
That's what's up. So this was kind of like the mecca of where this kind of started at right here. So
Yeah, I think it was interesting. At that point, bourbon was pretty like antiquated. Bourbon wasn't what we think of it now. Like, there are people spending a lot of money on bottles of bourbon all of a sudden.
Since 2020, it's just, transformed the whole culture of it for real. So.
Yeah, but back then, it's like bourbon was kind of like a secondary good. If you had money, you drank cognac, eau de vie, scotches, rum. And E.H. Taylor's vision was, well, if he thought he was making a better product, he wanted to tie that quality of his product to your hospitality, to your marketing. So I think of it like anything in the super premium category You know, you're not selling a Rolex out of the back of a car, right? Like, that person's normally wearing a tux and like you're like a suit, or you're not buying Louis Vuitton bags from that are real
Right.
from the swap meet. Like, you know, I think that's one of the things that E.H. Taylor's vision was connecting that premiumization to Franklin and Woodford County, and having a luxury facility to sell luxury whiskey. So it was really the first of its type too.
That's fire right there. I mean, I'm big on craft stuff, and I feel like Kentucky does, like, anything we get our hands on, we do it very well, and we make it such a personal thing here. And I think that you guys did a really good job of that here. So
Thank
what
you.
made you guys come to this location?
So I think some of it, in a way, was luck and happenstance and vision, right? I mean, so our founding partner, Will Arvin, was an attorney by trade. You know, he'd done some real estate and some other, like, just very entrepreneurial in spirit. But he was laying in bed one night, and he always wanted to be involved in bourbon. So he actually had some friends with another bourbon company. I say company because they didn't own a distillery, right? Like, these were a brand called Pinhook that was buying barrels and then doing their own brand.
Right.
And he was talking to them about, like, man, I'd love to own a bourbon distillery one day. And those guys are great. They're like, awesome. You buy barrels and you bottle it and you sell it. He's like, no, I'm going to build a distillery,
I want to make it.
which is crazy. You know, the reality is, like, the amount of capital it takes to operate a facility is a lot more aggressive, and, like, you know, just it's a totally different business model. So Will Googled distilleries for sale because that's the easiest place to find one.
Yeah.
And there's like one hit. Like, for the most part, when you're building a distillery, you're doing it from the ground up. You know, if you look at the last 10 distilleries in Kentucky, 9 of them in the modern era were built ground up. You buy a great piece of property, you build the infrastructure, and you build a modern facility. But Will didn't do it that way. He found this place on Google. He came out here. You know, he kind of kicked the tires on it for almost a year. He ended up purchasing the total facility for under $1 million. There's a reason no one else wanted to buy it.
I guarantee it. I
You
rode
know.
past this place as a, like, when we were 16, 17, this
Yep.
is one of the roads that we just drove on in the country, being from Kentucky, you
Yep.
know, just getting out the way of everything. And we rode past this, I mean, hundreds of times, and everybody just knew it as, like, the hunted area out towards Millville. Like,
Yeah, I don't know if it's still haunted. I hope it's not. I spend a lot of time here. But yeah, I mean, I think it's for sure. Like, this place was so neglected and abandoned. I mean, the last owner was an architectural salvage company in the early 2000s. It had been really kind of like neglected for almost 40 years in total. So when we came here, most of the roofs were missing, damaged. There was no water, no sewage. The electrical service was underwhelming here. So for Will to be,
just the base of it.
I mean, if that, I mean, a lot of it was a fear that you were going to lose a lot of their buildings too. You know, the reality was a lot of your other bourbon companies, your larger corporations, they had toured this place. And for them, they couldn't make economic sense of the build out, right? Like, it's going to cost millions of dollars to make whiskey. You might lose a lot of the structures, like, what's the benefit? But I love the fact that Will wasn't, like, afraid of the challenge. And, like, some of it was he was an industry outsider. Like, I think often a different perspective on something that's already been done is not a bad thing.
No.
So to look at it and not be afraid of the knowns, right?
Yeah.
Like, a big distillery would have been like, oh, well, you're going to have to completely remove and replace production, and you're going to have to get infrastructure down here. Will just became kind of enamored by this site.
I love that mentality of, like, not what if it doesn't work, the what if it does work mentality. Like,
Exactly. And for me, it's like any like hobby or passion that's like more than a job. Like, I mean, I think of like old car restoration. Like, you're not looking at this old car thing like, I'm going to make all this money.
right. No, you're
you're
not.
you're
Yeah.
thinking this is the right thing for the car. Or you're like, I mean, even like I came from a family where my dad did a lot of historic preservation and restoration as a contractor, and you have to have a heart for it. Like,
You do.
if you don't see history and say this deserves to be preserved and restored, this is the opposite of the correct decision for you. So yeah, luckily for us, Will just wasn't afraid, and he jumped in. You know, he put a really good team around him and just started kind of cracking at it. I mean, the reality was it took almost 2 years just to clear back the site, figure out what we even had. I mean, he purchased it in April of 2014, and we didn't start distilling until November of 2016.
So this has been a business for a while now. 10 years?
Yeah, so going over 10 years now. I guess our 10th anniversary would have been in April.
Okay.
I'd say business now. You know, back then, the reality was like, yeah, it was a business, but so much of that, you don't have any revenue or income for the first couple of years.
You're distilling at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we've been
Kinda
making.
a hurry up and wait game.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird industry because there's not a quick exchange or turnover. Normally, in business, you're like, oh, we're going to look at our 30-day, quarters, biannuals, annuals, 3 5 year plans. Where in whiskey, you're looking at, kind of like a 1 3 5 10 20, to try to be able to see, are you laying down enough, not for today, but for bourbon, that's a great example. We're not looking at, are we laying down enough bourbon for next year? We're looking at, are we laying down enough bourbon this year for 2030? To be able to get your age statements up and to be able to get to the maturation points that you want. I mean, there are other avenues too. Like when we evaluated our business model, the idea became we could also build other revenue streams through collaboration, which I dig. So we make whiskey for other people. They pay us to do that service. So we always kind of had cash flow coming in so we could wait and be patient with our own product. We were also bottling, blending, aging for other clients. So those revenue streams were helpful.
When you say that you're bottling for other clients, is it like they're coming in and just doing barrel selects, or are they actually like they have an idea of what they're wanting and you guys do the full project for them and they're just buying it at that point and bottling it?
Yeah, so I mean, some of it's like white labeling for other brands. Like in the barber world, it's like, hey, I want to make pomade. Well, I don't want to make pomade.
Yeah.
I want to come up with a sick recipe, and I'm going to go to you, who knows how to do it, and you're gonna do it out for me.
Gotcha.
And so it's almost identical. Where some of it is other distilleries that want the capacity but don't want to make that investment in their production scaling.
Okay.
Or we work with some distilleries that now have a distillery. Previously, they didn't, so they were trying to get inventory laid down to kind of jumpstart their later future. Some of it's other just brands. Like people are like, hey, I'm X, Y, and Z famous person, or I'm X, Y, and Z like bourbon person, and I want to build a brand with my buddies. So we're going to figure out, how to bottle that and get that into a package. That way you don't have to do the distillation because that's not what your expertise is.
Right.
Your expertise is really sales and marketing and branding.
So you get to focus on
Yeah.
that specialty.
So you can focus on what you're good at. And
Yeah.
what we're good at is making whiskey. So that partnership
Yes, sir.
helps somebody be, get product that you're excited about to be able to do the parts of the business that you're good at without having to worry about learning the whole totality of the experience.
Yeah, and then that can really mess up if you're good at the sales and the marketing, but you're not good at making bourbon or whiskey, and you put out a product that's it doesn't matter how good your marketing is, but you market the hell out of it in the beginning. You get all these sales in the beginning, and then nobody else comes back through because it wasn't right. You could ruin your brand before you really.
100%. I mean, I think for me, when I think about any consumer good, it's the first purchase is both hard and easy, right? Like if your marketing's good, you're going to be able to get that initial pull through, but it's having somebody cyclically purchase it, which is like that, how you're building a true consumer base. And I think that's what's tough about our industry. Like good quality product in a bottle is going to have somebody come back to you. Like our package is gorgeous, so that's going to have somebody pick it up. But on the product strategy and blending side, that's how we know we're going to be able to get that next transaction.
Yes, sir. That comeback. Yeah. Making sure that people come back and purchase the product. So with you, when you were younger, is this something that, like, what is your background as far as like education and everything?
So I thought I wanted to do art history stuff. So I went to school for art history and conflict analysis and resolution. And I loved it. Like, so, growing up and kind of like, I grew up in the Shenandoah Valley, which is south of DC, and I went to school at George Mason, which is close to DC. So like a lot of my buddies and friends ended up going to work for the government or like the DOD or the Foreign Service.
Yep.
So I thought that's kind of what I wanted to do because I was really into political science, but I came from it from a perspective that we haven't, as a society, always done political science well. It's that kind of like clash of nations perspective that where it's always combative and it's all like, there's only so many resources and we got to fight for them, where I came at it from more of like a socially positive aspect where there's enough for everybody. We just need to collaborate and integrate those perspectives better. So more like peace building and just more humanly considerate.
Right.
That's what I thought I wanted to do.
How it should be ran, probably.
Probably. Yeah, but conflict's newish to the world of political science. It's been around since probably like 70s and 80s from like a true practice standpoint. But so coming out of that, I ended up being like, okay, well, I'm going to go work in DC. Then I actually ended up moving here to chase my then girlfriend, now partner of almost a decade, because she was going to UK at the time. So my thought was like, okay, we'll move to Kentucky. I'll hang out for a year, and then we're going to go take a job in DC, and I'm going to do like something for the government or a government contractor or whatever. Then I ended up moving here and just going back into restaurants. So in DC, I worked for a larger restaurant corporation called Great American Restaurants. And then when I moved to Kentucky, I started to work for Bluegrass Hospitality Group. It's known for Malone's and Drake's, and I built OBC in conjunction with them.
Yeah, some big names in Kentucky. For sure.
They wonderfully ran, great corporation. You can make really good money with them. I think they run a very like organized restaurant. It doesn't feel overly corporate, but it feels like very like well executed.
People can work their way up.
You can work if you want to grow with them. They are an amazing. If you like see yourself as like a GM or like AGM or like you have aspirations as like a chef, they pay really well and they're awesome to work for. So
y'all hear that? Go check them
yeah,
out.
shout out to BHG.
Yeah, for sure.
I've always had a good experience working with them. So I ended up working with Bluegrass Hospitality Group for almost 3 years. Then I went in with a couple of my buddies. We ended up opening OBC, Old Bourbon County Kitchen, which was their first kind of like more cocktail whiskey oriented concept. And at the same time, I was already kind of looking, not for a way out because I didn't like what I was doing, but I needed a more like 9-to-5 job, right?
Yeah.
My wife is an attorney by trade. She works for the state government for Judge Goodwine on the Court of Appeals. So like she has an amazing job and it's not long hours. Like it's like that 8-to-5 deal where I came from restaurants where I was like noon to 4 a.m.
Yeah. And then sometimes in the restaurant industry, it is a 7-day-a-week thing, even when you're out. Like,
well, and I was on the hustle, right? Like I liked making money because money gave me the opportunity to have better opportunities in my life and vacation and whatever. So if I could work 8 days a week, I would have worked 8 days a week.
100%.
And in your 20s, like I had that energy to do that, but then I was kind of like, well, I've learned this and I have a passion for this, but I really love whiskey. So I was kind of looking at, well, what does my next kind of like opportunity look like? Do I want to go, like I know a lot about bourbon, but I was like, well, what's the next hurdle? Because I thought I knew a lot about bourbon, right? Like when you work in restaurants, like you have a lot of great access to education. But for me, I wanted to take that next hurdle, which was like really learning about it. And I thought the best way to do that was to go work for a producer. So I ended up meeting Will Arvin and Wes Murray, our founding partners, by happenstance at Malone's through a mutual friend who was involved with Keeneland. And they were just like, he's like, hey, they're opening up a distillery. And at that point, I was doing some like hospitality consultation and like bar build out. Like, so I'd help you open a bar.
Yeah.
And so I just started chatting with them and I liked them. I now say like, that's my best advice if you're in your 20s is like, work for somebody you like. Like at the end of the day, the money's all basically the same. And if you don't hate your boss and you don't hate the owner, you're going to have a hell of a lot better time when you go to work. And it just makes like tough conversations easier when you're normally in a really good mood. Right. So I think, I just liked Will as a person. I thought he was interesting. I liked his vision. A lot of the stuff in whiskey that I wasn't excited about at that time, we aligned on. At that point, there was a lot of non-distiller producers in the market that were not transparent.
They were saying that they were.
They're lying. I mean, in the bar space,
Same
like,
thing with the wine industry,
yeah,
a lot of
people would come in and be like, "You've never seen this product, but it's the best whiskey made." I'm like, "Cool. Who do you source it from?" And they're like, "We can't tell you that." I'm like, "It's our great grandfather's recipe, and we found it in a shoebox." And you're like, "Did you?"
Yeah.
And so for me, like, I've always just been like a very honest and transparent person. So, like, and as a bartender, I just wanted you to tell me the truth because like the accurate stories you told me are the stories I tell my guests so I can get money. Like, right?
Right, and they're gonna go tell,
and they're gonna spread it out. Yeah,
real,
and the telephone game's real.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like I loved from the beginning. Will was like, I want to be honest about what we're doing. He also wanted to make everything from scratch, which is crazy. Like at that point, it would have, you buy really great whiskey from somebody else who makes it, you brand it until you get yourself up and running. There's different ways to market, but for Will, the idea that he wanted to control everything in his process was kind of unique. There are not a lot of other Kentucky craft distilleries that were doing that at that point. Now I think of like there's a variety of others that have kind of like gotten more like Joyce Nethery's kind of doing that out like towards Louisville. I think she's in Shelbyville. I can't remember. Jepta Creed.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Like with Jepta, like she always knew she wanted to like kind of do it from scratch. Like there's a few others that kind of had that perspective, but for me it was just like we aligned on vision, values, and I also took the jump.
Yeah.
Like I was making really good money in restaurants, and I was happy, but sometimes you don't have to be afraid of like trusting in yourself.
Yeah.
I know, like for yourself, like as a owning your own business, like you just gotta trust yourself
Yeah, no,
sometimes.
you gotta take the leap of faith.
Yep.
And like, I would rather put it all on me
Yep.
than have to worry about if I'm gonna work my way up to the top of something. I'd rather start at the bottom and just build the ladder myself as I go.
Yeah, and I was the fourth employee, and what I saw,
The fourth employee.
yeah, the fourth employee.
Man.
Rusty, who was moving benches here earlier, I think
Yeah.
was like the second. So, yeah, I mean, we just had a really small team at that point, and what I saw a small team as was opportunity to do things that I wouldn't have the same opportunity with in a larger environment. You know, especially in our industry, with my background for being on premise and bartending, I would have probably ended up in more of like a sales or brand ambassador role. And for me, I wanted to be involved in everything from the lab to hospitality, anything
wanted
I
to
could
be able
touch.
to,
I wanted to
touch
touch
it
everything
all.
I could
Yeah.
and to learn everything I could.
Well-rounded.
Yeah, so I knew this was just the right opportunity for me, and I was also in my 20s, so I was like, worst case scenario, this doesn't work out,
I still got time.
and I'll call up BHG again and be like, hey, my bad, I tried it, this was cool, I learned a
Didn't
lot,
work out.
you know, and like I like to think I would have had an open door back to go back,
Yeah.
and like that's the right reason to leave someone. Like, I mean, we've had our staff come to me before, and it's like, hey, I have this opportunity that I can't get here, and I gotta take it. I'm like, awesome, dude. If we don't have an opportunity for you, and
Yeah.
you want to take a risk on yourself, like we are 100% all for it.
That's what it's about.
And we've had some of those employees come back.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, hey, I did
That's
this.
cool that you kept the door open
Yeah.
for them to come back.
If you leave on good terms and you leave because you believe in yourself and you want to go learn, like that's always the best reason to leave a position.
Anything, yeah.
And no one should ever like, no matter who your boss is, they can't be mad at you about trusting yourself or like,
and wanting
or
to
wanting to
grow.
take a risk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I got one barber that works for me, another one in school, and I tell them both all the time, like, if you guys are ever interested in venturing out, please let me know because I want to support.
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
That's why I'm in the position that I'm in, is because I wanted to trust myself. It was nothing against the barbers that I was working for or anything. At that, I still have really good relationships with every barbershop that I've worked in. I could probably go back to, I would say, most of those barbershops for real. The only reason I couldn't go back is probably because they're very successful and they got their chairs full.
Yeah.
So I keep really good contact, and I tell everybody, like you said, if somebody above you doesn't want you to go chase personal growth, that might not be the place you need to be at anyway. So,
Well, and I think as a younger company, you know, we want to hire people who are motivated, right? And some of that motivation is a desire for education and a desire to be a part of a culture that's interested in personal growth.
right.
You know, there are places that are going to pay you differently. I mean, you could probably go make more money and be in a role where you're not going to have that same opportunity for education or advancement. But I think that affects your happiness, and I don't know how long I could do that. But
Passion over profit. I think through true passion, profit will come. I think in this day and age right now, so much materialistic stuff is promoted, and everybody's trying to keep up with the Joneses in a sense. And I think people need to realize, especially in your 20s, like you're talking about, in your early 20s, it's okay to take a little bit of a pay cut and go work apprentice underneath somebody that you want to apprentice. If that's what you love, go do it. You don't want to get in your 30s and 40s and have to reset and do that. It's definitely a lot harder, but
it's harder, but it's still doable.
still doable.
Like if I always say, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, you need to do something else. Like
100%.
we forget how like short our lives are.
Very
Like
the time period on all of it. We blink and it's gone. So
I mean, that's I think what brought like me and my and Amanda to Frankfurt too. You know, we were looking at Frankfurt, and we were looking at Lexington. You know, that's where we lived previously, and Frankfurt was just like, you know, we're so close to Lexington and Louisville. If you still want that city vibe, you can go do it. But we love the community in downtown Frankfurt. The housing was a lot more reasonably priced in Lexington and Louisville, and you know, we knew we wanted a family one day too. So the idea that like we could be actually part of a community, not part of a
Frankfurt's
city
definitely one of those places.
that has pockets of community. I think Lexington in particular and Louisville has pockets of community.
They do.
But the fact that like, man, I know everyone in Frankfurt.
Yeah, it's not hard.
For better or for worse sometimes.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
for
for,
sure, but-
for most times, like it's a lot of good people.
Yep.
It's reasonably priced. It's an awesome community that like is also very agricentric. We have a fire farmers market. We can walk around, do everything.
It's getting
like
more progressive by the year, and I think it's just more of our generations getting into business. And once we do, things change in a community when the younger generations get into business and get into owning stuff in your local community. So please don't be scared to go out here as a young person and try to start a business in your local community, because it helps. It brings change. You want the progression? There's only one way to get it, honestly, and that's to be part of the progression. So,
well, I look at like what happens into like downtowns, right? I mean, in the last couple of decades, we've seen like this kind of like in the 90s and 2000s, like an exodus from your historic downtowns and main streets.
yep.
So and it only takes one, right? Like if you get the right restaurant or you get the right retail store in a downtown, well, then it's going to have somebody else look at it and be like, well, they're successful down here.
Mm-hmm.
So what if I was successful down here?
Yep.
So I think that downtown Frankfurt's a great example of that, where you're starting to get this kind of like domino effect where you're like, all of a sudden there's another coffee shop and there's a couple retail stores, and like there's just this movement of like younger and more creative like entrepreneurship happening in downtown Frankfurt.
I love it.
And all of a sudden our storefronts aren't empty.
Yeah. And they were empty there for some time.
For a bit. And I mean, when we first looked at Frankfurt, years ago, like maybe 6-7 years ago, that was kind of one of my hesitations on Frankfurt, is the downtown felt kind of empty.
Yeah.
Which now it's the opposite of that.
Complete
So
opposite.
yeah, and I think the distillery industry was kind of the same thing. For a long time you had these like large corporate hegemony where you had these massive corporate brands, they own these huge distilleries.
And that was it.
And it didn't feel like there was space. Like I always said, there was these two tiers. You were either like super passionate and you made a barrel a day, or you made 1,000 barrels a day, and there was no in between.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the numbers didn't make sense, the hospitality wasn't there. But then, luckily for us, like we kind of entered this like golden era for like larger craft, where we're not making a barrel a day, but we're not making 1,000. We're still independently owned.
That sweet gray area spot right there.
I call it your mid majors, right? I like as a basketball nerd, like you don't have to have every 5-star recruit. You have to put a great team on the court and have a good coach.
That's it.
And you don't have to out-compete with NIL money if you're getting the right guys and trusting in them, like, because their view, it's like, okay, I might not make $1 million a year in NIL, but if I go to the right program with the right coach, I'm going to get in the NBA, right? And I think that's kind of our view. It's like getting the right coaching, getting the right team together is more important than drawing the right name. So I think for us, it's just like being patient and being kind of scrappy. You'll be surprised at what you can do. Yeah.
Kind of like, so one of my things I wanted to talk about today was like, we are in the heart of bourbon country, and there is a lot of, I don't know if people realize, like, to get in the bourbon industry, like you said, it costs a lot of money. Like, bottom line, it costs a lot. Like, and for you guys to be a younger business competing with some of these distilleries that's been here forever, it's got to be a little difficult at times. And I want to know, like, in your head, like some of y'all strategies that y'all have used, because you said, a little bit more scrappy, and I would say just like, I don't know, it's the market, like this is a beautiful bottle right here, and everything that you guys do is just very different. Like, even when we were just in the gift shop, I was looking around, I was like, the shirts are different. It's just not like, everything bourbon is like wood feel and like certain colors and certain tones, and you guys like bring this brightness to it and this youthfulness to it. So
yeah, I think from the onset, one, we learned a lot of lessons, right? I think for me, when I think of marketing, there's good money and bad money, and then like work. There's kind of these three buckets. Like, so for us, like we invested a ton in our package, and we're actually currently undergoing like even more like alteration label. We'll have a new face on some labels next year. So your package is what the majority of consumers are going to know you by.
Yep.
So if cutting corners there is like the worst place to cut corners, unless you're trying to start a bourbon brand, then cut your corners there, guys. No, I'm just teasing. But like, I mean, that's, if you're, and spending that money is going to resonate to your sales. So like you need a really good package that tells your story and translates to a shelf, because we don't get the hospitality opportunity everywhere we are, right? So I think it's also coming at it from a different perspective. Like, we are an industrial process, so we are part of that industry. We're kind of a factory in a way.
In a sense,
but you want to be also very quality oriented. So it's kind of like this quality, good package, and then having that package tell the story you want it to. I love the term like liquid storytelling, or like I always say we are a hospitality company that's really good at making bourbon, because that's kind of the
I like that.
second tier
I like
what
that.
we are good at. Is like we're also more nimble, right? Like your big companies they don't pivot well. You know, when you're that big,
You can't. It's hard to.
and you have to go through board approval, and you have to go to your attorneys every time you want to make a decision, and if you want to do a collaboration or be on a podcast, you have to check with your PR company, and the PR company has to confirm it, and then you have to get it approved by your lawyers, and then your lawyers have to approve it by your marketing directors, and everything takes so much more time.
Right. Right. A lot more steps to it when you're working with the bigger.
Yeah, where we have the benefit of being very personal, especially in our local community. You know, we love collaborations. Like, so if a friend calls me and says, "Hey, I want to do a barrel collaboration," or like, do you have any used barrels so I can age my beer in it?" That's not a decision that takes a month or a year.
Right.
It's a decision I'm like, "Yeah, man, that sounds awesome."
That's fire.
Like,
That's
yeah,
fire.
and I think it's allowed us just to be a little bit more like creative and nimble without those same kind of constraints.
It's a lot more personal like that with
yeah.
your community. Like, you know.
And it's just being relationally oriented. I think, you know, and it's also understanding where you need to win. You know, I think there's this misperception in any consumer good that, like, if you're not selling 1 million cases,
You're
10
not
million
winning.
cases, 16 million cases, you're not winning enough.
Right.
But if you actually look at those models, like, the difference between some of those jumps, the cost of spending it on marketing and national advertisement and sales and all this stuff, like, you're not really necessarily even making more money. You know, as a distillery, if you're up to a certain amount of like volume, like 100,000 cases, like you're incredibly successful.
Right.
And I think even in your personal life, what we were talking about, like profits, you know, passions over
Passion over
profit,
Yep.
you know, there's a world where Castle and Key is going to be really profitable and really successful. And will as an owner, you know, isn't beholden to these like, I have to get these shareholder numbers up, I got to pay out my dividends, blah, 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 blah. Like, that forces you to make decisions for your business that aren't decisions for your consumer. Where we've always been able to be like, hey, we're going to wait till our whiskey's mature. Well, that's not the best financial decision, but it's the best product
I remember,
decision.
Like when y'all really did wait to drop.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah. Wheated bourbon was 5. We're
Yeah.
releasing a cash strength wheated bourbon at 7 years old this year. But I think it's this mixture of being like thoughtful and patient and knowing that some of these wins that don't seem big enough for a big brand are a big win for
Huge
us.
wins, right.
And I think of even like, you know, we had our cocktail trailer at the Downtown Summer Music Series in Frankfurt.
Do you feel
there-
like that was a win for y'all?
It was a huge win.
Yeah.
I mean, we made money. We had a good time. We were able to have our cocktail trailer out and support the local community. Like,
I've heard nothing but good
Yeah.
things about from the bourbon to the employees that work here. I've heard nothing but good things about you guys. Like,
and I think that's what we're spoiled in. Like, you know, we've been doing a ton of festival activations. Like, catch us at every festival around. Like, if you're doing a festival, hit us up. We'll be there pouring.
y'all hear
And
that? Y'all doing
but
the
I think
festival
for
now?
us, it's like that kind of marketing is slow. It's like more of a guerrilla campaign, or like it takes more time. But that saturation is like, if you do enough of it, and you're still making money, it's not like you're losing money from it.
Mhm.
So for me, it's like, why wouldn't we do that?
Also, it's like what you kind of were talking about earlier. Like, it's more personal, and it's getting your clients to come back and buy another bottle. You want that percentage, the comeback percentage to be high. Like,
Well, now
buying
what?
one bottle doesn't help, but when you got a loyal client that wants to come back and tell their friends and stuff, so going to those small events, the festivals
Yeah.
and stuff, I feel like it's where you're gonna get a high rate of people coming
Dude.
back and buying your bottle.
And it shows you if you're right. Like, it's a great R&D testing ground, right? You know, my favorite thing at a festival when we have our cocktail trailer out is like watching somebody have a drink, have a good time, and then bring back like their friends. Like, all of a sudden,
Like,
you have somebody roll back
we
up
gotta
and it's
come
like,
back through.
I told you,
Yeah,
this is a
this is
spot. Like, this is where you need to go. This is the best drink here. Like, that's a huge compliment to us. But I just thought, like, you took one person, you were hospitable to them, you're kind, you gave them a great product, and then all of a sudden you have 4 people.
Hospitality first, though.
And that multiplier compounds. Like,
Yeah.
it's a slow process because it's like 1 becomes 2 and 2 becomes 4 and 4 becomes 8. And there's ways to juice that. I mean, I think when you look at marketing, like, yeah, you could spend $10 million on an ad campaign, and it's really hard to know how successful it was on your sales side.
Right.
Like, that marketing data is
Right.
inherently kind of squishy. Like, you can pay more money for researching, and, you know, people,
It can tell
ringing
you how many
phones
people it
and
reaches and
yeah.
everything, but it can't tell you how many people
bought it.
because
Yeah.
of that right there. When you go to festivals, you can be like, okay, this is how many bottles we brought.
Yep.
We gave some testings out, and this is how many bottles we sold. Yeah.
It just gives you real time data in a way that I think people underscore. And I get it from like a large corporate perspective. You're like, that's a headache for them. They're like, oh man, we're gonna have to staff 3 people,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have to buy this trailer, and then we're gonna have to have liability insurance, which you have to have, and you're gonna drive this trailer around, and who's gonna coordinate that? Well, we got to hire another person. And for us, it's like, I love an excuse to hire somebody. I'm like, man, we could get more help hands that are gonna be able to advocate and spread the brand more. Like, we have 150 plus employees now. Like, I always say, we're looking for like a reason to hire somebody. Like,
Yeah,
we're like,
yeah.
if it makes any sense, we're like, let's hire somebody else. Like,
one of my homies got on here, and he's just a really good worker. Like, doesn't miss work, and he's been in multiple different like industry, factory style jobs, and this is like a breath of fresh air to him, and you can tell it too.
Yeah.
Like, he feels like he's respected and treated well here, and in this city alone, there's a lot of factory work here, and so like, I think you guys are setting a new standard for how to treat employees.
well, I think we do this weird thing, right, where you can come at it and be really corporate and like super structured and like, this is the rule, this is how we're going to enforce it.
Yeah.
And you have people show up to a job.
Yeah.
They're like, and they're going to treat you
And
the same
that's
way.
it.
If
Yeah,
you
yeah.
treat somebody like a number, they're going to feel like a number, and they're going to treat you like a check.
Yep.
Where, I think we try to be kind and we try to hear people where they're at. We try to offer a good amount of opportunity. I mean, we've had a lot of warehouse guys go to the distillery. We've had people from hospitality go into sales. I think it's like, if you want to put in the work and you want to grow, there's opportunity here. And at the end of the day, man, like, not to be unhumble, but our leadership's pretty kind. I come from restaurants where like, I worked for a corporate restaurant group in DC that was like incredibly strict and very like punitive.
Yeah.
Like, if you made a decision, it was like very structured and rigid and firm. I mean, you made fire money. Like,
Right.
And-
it's just a different
and they-
style of business.
when they knew, they're like, you're gonna follow the rules because this is the best money in the in the city.
Right. We're gonna pay
So,
you,
like,
but you're gonna follow.
You're gonna follow the rules. Where like working for BHG, like I feel like they were a lot like just better to work with. I knew the ownership. Like, everybody was way more chill. Like, if you had an issue, you could go to them. Where that's what I love about Will. Will's here more than I am. Like, Will's up in the office right now. That dude's here if he's not traveling 5-6 days a week.
That's amazing.
Like-
For somebody to be on grounds as much as him being. Like,
And he wants to know. I mean, he's an attorney by trade, so I tease him. He wants to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Not because he's like micromanaging you, but because he is passionate. He is as excited about what you're doing as you are excited about what you're doing.
y'all run a clean, like when we were coming in and bringing in the camera stuff, and if somebody didn't see us come in at first, they're gonna walk up and be like, hey, y'all know where y'all going or who y'all here with? Like, y'all run a really tight ship here, and but it's still so relaxed at the same time, and I think it's because everybody's playing their role so well. Everybody's able to be relaxed a little bit more.
I think some of that, like, counterpoint, we
Yeah.
seem relaxed, right? But it's like a duck
Right.
underwater thing. Like,
Right.
I think when you build good systems and you have good, and you're being supported, like, even in your most hectic moments, like, your homies have your back.
You guys work
So,
well. So if,
yeah.
if throughout the chaos and everything, when you come here, you cannot tell.
Like,
And I'm sure it's a huge stress on all y'all at all times. I mean, running something like this is for sure, but like, you guys work very well and run it very well. So
and I think too, like, on the bar side, I love our hospitality program. Like, they burn, like, they're working really, really hard. They're working really fast, but like, you can't tell they're working that fast. Like, it looks kind of cavalier.
yeah.
But dude, the bar team here is, I think, one of the best in the state. If you ever need, like, anyone who's ever looking, if you have bartending experience and you want to work with like the best bar team, like, not to take anybody away from my friends downtown, but like,
come through.
it's also a bar job that's like, you're done by like 5 or 6 most days unless you do events.
That's fire.
Where, if you have kids or whatever, I couldn't imagine. We have a 5-month-old and a 3-year-old, and I couldn't imagine working until 2 in the morning. I don't know how you make that work.
Me neither.
Yeah.
I mean, having kids and running business is hard enough. It's hard enough. Well, we're here, and this is what they do. So I'd like to talk about what we got on the table right here.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned earlier, first and foremost, we're a bourbon distillery, so I thought this was a fun one to pour up for this. Castle and Key small batch bourbon. So this is our kind of like flagship bourbon. Minimum 4-year-old age statement. Average age is a little bit closer to 5 now.
Okay.
I'd have to check. I think it's either next year, like the end of next year, we'll be moving up to a full 5-year-old age statement. So picking up age as time goes on.
Yep. Yep. This is
super
the
tasty.
first bottle I got in the shop, and I would say this one got drank the quickest. Everybody was super interested, based off bottle alone, the image of it and everything. This is also what we drank in the first episode of the podcast when we gave a shout out to Castle and Key. I think we gave them a shout out the first 2 episodes, and it's nice to be out here now.
We love it. Yeah.
This is exactly what we were drinking right here. So when I smell it, I get, like I told him, I get deep caramel notes, very sweet for my nose. And then
Yeah, I think, every batch of our whiskey is blended to be a little dynamic and different. So, but for me, I think we have a lot of stylistic continuity where you're always going to get a really sweet, kind of robust, like nice fruit forward nose.
yeah, I was
A lot of
gonna say I
vanilla,
get a little bit of fruit.
vanillins, a lot of caramel,
Yep.
a little bit of like stone fruit, kind of
Yep.
like a dried cherry, like a
Yeah,
Rainier
that's
cherry.
Yep.
I think the palate, we always go for a really full-bodied, like silky mouthfeel, nice velvetiness. You don't want too much young oak or like that greenwood kind of compounds.
Yeah. That can ruin an early,
Yeah.
early bourbon company for real.
Yeah.
The young oak taste, the young whiskey taste.
Yeah, and this is a little bit higher proof. Our barrel entry for this was about 107 proof, so this is close to cask strength at 103. But there's always a
This is
misperception. 103. Same reaction. So people like proof,
Drinks like an 86.
right? Like proof and balance are different. Like I've had 80 proof whiskeys that were hot because they were unbalanced. I've had
Right.
140 proof whiskeys that drank like caramel candy.
That's
So I think if a whiskey's blended well and balanced, it's going to be integrated and approachable. We also make sure all of our whiskeys are going to dilute well, that they, are going to take, if you like your whiskey on the rocks, it's going to be good for you. If you like a cocktail, this cocktails really well too. Because I think it's about coming to your consumers where they are. Like, a lot of your, like, bourbon people are like, I only drink my bourbon neat. I'm like, cool, do you tip 20%? Right? Like, that's the bigger question.
yeah.
I think for me, it's more about like, my dad, he
How you like to
loves
drink is how
bourbon.
you like to drink.
My dad likes bourbon like snow cone style, like all the ice you can fit in a glass, bourbon.
Yeah.
Like one of my best buddies, he likes bourbon in L8. Shout out to L8. Slaps. Like,
hey,
if
I
it-
love a good. You can't get better on a mixed drink for me.
when it's 100 degrees outside in Kentucky,
Cold L8.
a cold L8, a lot of ice, a little bit of whiskey is going to get you right. So,
100%.
I think that's the thing. It's like, you don't need to be something to everybody, but you need to be considerate about the way people are interacting with your product. So
Right.
I think we like to be
never
known
thought
for really
about it like
silky, drinkable, enjoyable whiskey.
Having to test it for neat on the rocks with a cocktail,
Yeah.
like to make a good all around whiskey or bourbon. I mean,
For your flagships, right? Like you
Yeah.
can do nerdier projects. Like, we've done a project with KBBG for Untold Story, which is a really cool like charitable project that we do that donates all that proceed back to increasing diversity scholarship funds in Kentucky, to expand the kind of dynamic of who we see being represented in distilleries, right? The goal is for everybody to feel welcome in the distillery space.
For it to
But
be
that
inclusive.
project, like that whiskey, don't drink that whiskey neat. Like that whiskey is so, I mean, not neat. Don't drink that whiskey in a cocktail. Like we are
Not
so
made for a
proud
cocktail.
and like KBBG, it takes ice well, but that whiskey is like so good neat and on the rocks. And it's also really rare. There's only like a couple hundred bottles of it every year. So
I see that. I would be running up
yeah,
on that then.
we do it once a year. Our friends at KBBG are an awesome Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild.
Okay.
They're out of Lexington, but kind of central Kentucky. They're just great advocates for expanding kind of like the diversity within whiskey and what we look at as consumers.
Yeah, because he was part of that guild, and we went to a couple events up there, and they host really good events. They're very educational,
They-
super professional. Like,
Professional, they know whiskey
Yeah.
as well as I know whiskey,
Yep.
which is like they are just really buttoned up and great advocates because this is America's only heritage spirit too, right? So the story of bourbon is the story of everyone in American society. So to be able to kind of make people feel more welcome at the table is definitely something we've been really excited about.
when I joined the Bourbon Society in 2020, it was one of those things. I went to a couple events, and I was like, this isn't really too diverse here. Which, it's cool for me to get in uncomfortable situations, but I still like I want to feel inclusive. So I want it to feel like, I am welcome. And I think over the last 4 years, it's gotten more where it feels more welcoming. And even our bourbon society in Frankfurt has gotten more groups of people that, might have not been into bourbon pre-COVID. I don't know what happened during COVID. I think everybody got really bored and got into bourbon, though.
Well, I feel like people are looking for just something to do, frankly.
Really
Yeah, I
was.
mean, in a way, but I think some of it's like, bourbon, if you dig history and you dig culture and you
Yeah.
dig flavor and you dig social, bourbon's always been this great social
yeah,
binder.
yeah.
So I think the ways that we can use like spirits or having a cocktail or having a whiskey with somebody, it just like, it gives us a connection point, especially as Kentuckians,
Yeah.
to be able to sit down and say like, hey, no matter where we come from or what we're into, this unifies
We
and
got
connects
this.
us.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have family legacies too, like
My
tied to
grandpa.
it,
I
right?
mean,
And but
Yeah.
but how cool is that? It's like so many people have had family members tied to the industry, so we can sit down and kind of reminisce about like our familiar connections to it, or if you don't have a familiar connection to it, it ties to every American like point in history, ties to bourbon. I mean,
Yeah,
like
at
my
some point.
like think of Andrew Hamilton. Everyone's like, oh, Hamilton. Hamilton, as the Secretary of the Treasury, raised the first militia in the United States to go after whiskey taxation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, super cool, right? Like,
Yeah.
so all these things that happen in America are because of whiskey.
That's fire.
The first Consumer Protection Act was the Bottle and Bond Act in 1897.
That's fire.
The Pure Food and Drug Act, like you could get your cocaine over the counter, but like we needed to know exactly what was in those bottles of whiskey.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, so it's like, whiskey's just been like this kind of like really great symbol of so many occurrences in American history. So I think it's just a great way to connect about it.
It is.
And I think during COVID, people were looking for a reason to talk to somebody
Socialize,
and
yeah.
socialize. And I think a lot of the whiskey societies did a heck of a good job, like giving virtual or other ways to kind of connect to people who felt like you weren't getting a lot of connection. So I think it just reminds you that like social lubricants are real.
And it helps
Yeah.
with it. I'm a very I used to be a social butterfly. Nowadays, I'm not as social, and I think it's just years of being in business and stuff like that. But I will say, liquid courage. A little not. There is a thing of overindulgence, but like for socialization, to have a drink and to calm your mind down a little bit, it's one of those perfect things. For
Well,
sure.
I think it shows the importance of ritual. Again, I'm an art history nerd,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
like, ritual and repeat, right? So the activities we do in our life that we feel most comfortable with that are almost ritualistic into context, making a cup of coffee, pouring a cup of tea,
Yep.
like reading the morning paper, like
Yeah.
those things automatically trigger you to be really comfortable.
Yeah.
So if you've done it before, like sitting down and pouring a little bit of whiskey and just taking a moment to not check your phone, to not be on social media,
Yeah.
just to like talk to someone, I think automatically makes you feel more connected.
The ritual things, man, it's in human nature to have rituals. And honestly, like my morning rituals, my night rituals, would keep me going throughout these days and keep me motivated to continue to do the things that I do. And honestly, it's the actual ritual more than the drinking of it sometimes. You get what I'm saying?
That's why I love cocktails. Like I like making cocktails because I love that practice hand nature of something where you have the opportunity to mix a cocktail.
Right. I'm sure by the time by the time it's done and you done put that love and effort into the cocktail, before you even put it up to your lips, it's like, like I'm already relaxed. I'm already here.
I don't even, by the time I finish making an old fashioned or something, I'm
You
like,
could almost not drink it.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm going to drink it
I
still.
know,
Yeah,
for
for sure
sure,
going to
for
drink
sure.
it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Man, and this is awesome right here. And we're sitting outside right now. This is room temperature. It's not cold whatsoever. So, and it is smooth as smooth can get.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our team is really good at distillation, and we have the best warehouse team around. Our job on the blending team is just to highlight all the effort they put in.
And as it opens up, it almost, I want to say it gets smoother.
Yeah, I mean, so especially younger whiskeys, I think of anything like sub 7 years old, they can be a little bit tight, and then when they all volatilize and they get a little bit more air, when they get a little bit more time just to kind of sit, they're just going to become a little bit softer, and that's why like ice isn't a bad thing. It causes an exothermic reaction, so it slows down your molecules a little bit and just gives your alcohol a little bit more softness. So if you get a lot more like alcohol, like, you know, ethanol tonality, it's just going to make it a little bit more laid back, right?
So tell me, my granddad, he would pour like a full glass of bourbon, and then he would go get some club soda. I don't know if it works the same with it.
Same,
but
yeah.
It would be like the smallest little.
Just to break it, just to get it open a touch. I mean, it's funny,
So
you know.
it does. Those couple
Yeah.
drops do something.
Dude, I mean, for sure, a couple of drops of whiskey. That's why you'll see like a lot of whiskey bars will have like eyedroppers, because you just open it up a little bit. And always, if you don't like the initial proof, you might like it at a different proof. Like we always kind of pick like the optimum proof on our blends. Like every batch is different batch to batch. So we're picking it where we think it's kind of peaking. But if you think it's a little bit hot or it's like it's a little bit too warming for you, drop a little bit of water in there. Totally cool. Put some ice in it if you dig ice. Like we're always drink your whiskey how it makes
like
you
to drink
happy.
it. Yeah. So many people get caught up on like they get into a culture and they're like, I have to do it like this. And it's like, are you truly enjoying it every time if you're like so hung up on this idea of what it's supposed to be, like, or what it is?
I think of it any fandom, anything like that. It's like people arguing over like minute details in like certain movies. It's like this Star Wars movie, I saw this exact moment at, you know, the minute 29:13. Like this is out of canon, bro. Did you like the movie?
Yeah, that's
like
it.
was
That's
it watchable?
Yeah.
Did you have a good time? And if you want to go down that rabbit hole, you're welcome to.
Yeah.
But it's just like I think we're sometimes tougher on people who are not ourselves. You know, it's like if somebody's finding joy in something,
let them enjoy it.
it's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's great.
If you don't want to drink
Does it
like
hurt
that,
you?
don't drink it like that.
Are you forcing them to drink it like that?
Yeah,
like,
right.
yeah, I mean, I think it's just about like being inclusive and welcoming and like kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real. Oh man. Yeah. This whole place is just you can everybody that we've spoke to so far is just smile on the face, love, kind. The energy's here.
We also work in the prettiest environment. I mean, that's a shout out to our hospitality and grounds team. You know, John Karloftis, who's an amazing fine gardener, designed all of our gardens and grounds. And then, you know, Wednesday through Sunday, you know, you can come down here. We'll do food trucks during more like, I think it's, you have to check the calendar, but I think it's like Thursday through Sunday now we're doing food trucks, or Friday through Sunday.
You gotta do different food trucks?
Yeah, mix it up.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, we like to mix it up and support again, community support, giving a lot of people a chance to make their money, do their thing. But we have a walk-up bar that's great. You can come, grab a drink, hit up a food truck, sit by the creek and just chill.
You guys got a trail out here?
Yeah, we have a quarter-mile long botanical trail. So if you like a little bit of a walk, you know, it's definitely relaxed. You can hear the sound of Glenn's Creek in the background on this.
When we were setting up,
it's
I
a
was
nice
sitting
place to
over
hang out.
here, they were getting set up. I closed my eyes for like 2 seconds and was just listening to everything that was going on. Next thing I know, I was waking up like 20 minutes later, still sitting in the chair like,
I can't.
man,
Yeah.
it's so calm back here.
It's calm. It's pretty. It's just a different dynamic. I mean, I think it depends on what you want experientially, but
For sure.
that was kind of our pitch on the Bourbon Trail. Is like we toured all these other awesome distilleries, and they were all doing a great job, and some of them were doing a lot of tours. And our view was like, okay, well, we don't have bourbon yet, so what if we were just a place to come chill for a little bit? You know, our whole thing was like, you know, we're right between Buffalo Trace that does an awesome job and Woodford Reserve that does an awesome job.
Right.
And they have great whiskeys. So we're like, without bourbon, how are you going to compete? And our view was like, our pitch was basically like, oh, you have like an hour to kill between
through.
distilleries? Come through. Go to the stave. Grab like a little bit of a snack.
the stave's
Yeah,
fire.
grab a snack.
Yeah.
Have a cocktail. Come down here. Sit by the creek. You want to kill 30 minutes and just like hang out, read a book, grab
That's
a beer. You know, we do beer here. Like, we don't make beer, but we sell other people's beer. Yeah. You know, because our
What kind of beer do y'all sell here?
we rotate, so a lot of it's mostly like local brands
Local
and
beers?
stuff. Like we've done everything from like Sig, West 6th Street, Mere Twin,
Awesome.
just supporting our friends
Those
locally.
are like, you literally named my
Yep.
3 favorite beer places of Kentucky right there.
Yeah, we've done like Grave, like, you know, just now we do more cans because we run all cocktail lines. So, but for me, it's like if you come out with your friends, I would love for you to drink our products. Like, I think we make amazing spirits. Maybe you want a beer.
Yeah.
Maybe you want a glass of wine. Like, maybe you want, this is going to sound crazy, a non-alcoholic drink. You know, like we do a bunch of like really awesome soda syrups and shrubs and stuff.
Man,
So
I
even if
would've
you don't
never even
drink, you can
thought
come
about
out here and
that.
have. But it's about being welcome. You know, when
Yeah.
we're doing the Bourbon Trail, a lot of what we found is it's very spirits oriented. It's a Bourbon Trail.
Yep.
You're here to drink bourbon.
Yep.
But for me, you know, I think of like, you know, I have friends that are either like sober or like light drinkers.
Yep.
and they still want to hang out and experience it. Like
They still go.
they're still
Yeah.
going to spend money in your gift shop. They still want to do the tour. They still want to hear about
Love
it.
the history aspect
But they
of
want
it.
to avoid the alcohol component of it. And I think for me, like, again, it's about inclusivity and coming to people where they are and like allowing and welcoming, not allowing, that's not the right word, welcoming them and saying like, hey, you might not drink. That's cool.
That's
We're
okay.
still going to make you feel welcome.
Yeah.
And you're going to probably be an even better advocate than the person who had a cocktail. Because for the first time on the bourbon trail, you're going to feel like you're not just like
Part of it.
being sold or
Yeah.
like kind of push a product. And I think a lot of the other distilleries now are doing a really good job of that too. Like when I started doing bourbon tours 10 years ago, you know, you'd watch people push their whole flight and be like, oh, well, I don't like bourbon, but my buddy does, so he's going to drink all this bourbon.
But I
And
was
you're
seeing
like,
people
yeah.
just get hammered on the tours and stuff like that. It's
You
kinda
don't
hard
you don't
to-
see as much of that anymore. I
No,
think
it's
it's
a lot more
regulated.
chill. It's-
Like it's good that that's regulated. Like you can only have 1.75 ounces on a tour.
Yeah.
That's just helps you to be mindful. You can
Yeah.
only have, you know, we only do a 2 cocktail maximum here, because we want you to enjoy the spirit and be mindful of that enjoyment. And not like if you want to party, go get an Airbnb and do your thing.
And
Like
there's
as long as
plenty
you're
of
not as long
Airbnbs
as you're
now.
not driving and you're over 21, you're a grown adult,
Yeah.
and you want to hang out in an Airbnb, that
We have an entertainment district for this.
go for it.
Yeah.
Don't drive.
Yeah.
Be considerate to your neighbors.
That's it.
Great.
Yeah. Downtown, there's plenty of Airbnbs.
Yeah.
There's
There-
a whole area where you get to walk around. And
There's a lot of
drink.
awesome hotels now downtown that are
Yep.
being built. Like the
Yep.
Sinclair's super rad.
Oh,
Um,
what's the housing? The who? Have you seen that?
That's the new one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't know
I
a ton
don't know
about
what
it.
it's called, but I've walked past it a couple times at night. It looks awesome.
Is that the one?
It's right next to Kentucky Gentleman. It was.
I think that's the Sinclair, isn't it?
Is it? It
Yeah,
might
oh
be.
no, St. Clair.
It's
St. Clair. My bad, guys. Don't come at me for that one.
yeah.
Um,
Is it called the St. Clair?
We'll check that. Edit this
Yeah,
out
we'll
if it's
check
not.
That. We'll check that.
Yeah.
But it's downtown. If you're
Yeah.
downtown, you can't miss it. It's one of the tallest.
Yeah, I mean,
buildings
even
downtown.
Castle on Key, like Will owns 2 awesome Airbnbs. One of them's right up the hill at the top of Duncan here. We're gonna be
fire.
putting some warehouse out there. We're
That's
growing some
fire.
grain out there. It's gonna be rad. And then another one is the old stone house by Bourbon on Main.
Oh.
Yeah.
That
Which
one's
is
silly.
super, super
That
nice.
one's si- That is
Yep.
a nice Airbnb. It's a beautiful location. You got Bourbon on Main right
Which
there.
is always-
You got
Bourbon on Main does
Goodwood.
such a
I
good
mean, you got
job. Goodwood does a
everything
great
down
job.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, do you have a favorite project that y'all work that you got to personally work on as far as the whiskey?
That's tough. I mean, I think our first rye blend might be my favorite project because it's like the culmination of like years of effort, right? So be able to sit down and like say, hey, this is the first time we're blending whiskey that we've distilled and bottled here in over 50 years. It's just a wild feeling. So that might be my most like sentimental one.
Yeah, connection to it.
Yeah, because it just made it really real. You know, our team had been working so hard making these great whiskeys and, you know, being patient with them. And then to be able to put something together to show off, you know, the people who've been waiting was like both pretty stressful but really exciting. Favorite bourbon project? I mean, I hate to give a call out to a new one that's not out yet, but
Hey.
the cash strength wheated bourbon is going to be 7 years old, really fully matured. It's going to be really, really tasty. So we've started to kind of dip our toes into that one. If not that, the last Untold Story and the new Untold Story is the first time we blended any of our Hickory King bourbon. So Hickory King is an heirloom white corn varietal that is like the size like of hominy. It's like half the rows per ear. It grows super tall. The protein and starch constructs are super cool in it. It's just really, really cool bourbon. And it dates all the way back to like, you know, it's kind of similar to like another heirloom varietal called Silver Queen, but a little
I've
bit
heard
more
of
like
Silver
bourbon
Queen, yeah.
friendly, like a
Yeah.
table corn. And we've been working with our farmer, Walnut Grove out in Adairsville, the Holcombs, for Sam and his family for 8 years on that project now. So like to see that grain not only come from field to bottle, that's going to be,
About to be
yeah. And also to put the first time that has ever been bottled in Untold Story is a pretty cool statement too. Like, so all of our first barrels of a product were always an Untold Story. So the first bourbon that we ever bottled was one of the 2 barrels in Untold Story, the first one,
So Untold
the first
Story is
wheated
like
bourbon.
A line of bourbons that you guys have.
Yeah, we do a new chapter every year that kind of tells the story of historic African American contributions to whiskey. So it's cool.
That's the type of stuff that like you don't see with some of these bigger bourbon corporations and stuff like that. To be able to give back to the history, give back to some of the people that might have not been included in the history, and then to
Well, they were included in the history, but their stories were never told, which is the bigger issue,
okay,
right?
yeah,
it's like the contributions of those individuals have
They were
dated back
there.
centuries.
Right.
It just, as we became more corporate and larger, and then through the like civil rights era, a lot of those stories were eroded over time as we became more like cultural in our hiring practices and more exclusive in our promotion and managerial advancements.
I think that's what some of some of the conversation today. Like one of the questions, and I've said it earlier, is like what sets you guys apart. And I think everything that we've talked about, you guys have a detail in there that sets you guys apart from everybody else.
Yeah, I mean,
It really does.
I think it's just about finding your own space and your own voice, and like knowing what you do well and doing it well, and knowing what you don't do well and trying to work on it, but staying focused. And not, you don't have to be for everybody, but you have to be for the right people that are going to be your fans. And I don't know, just being like positive with your outcomes, realistic.
So this year, is there any cool projects people should be looking out for, or is it more in the next few years?
We're working on too much right now. I mean, it's exciting, right? Like, we're working on a lot of good stuff. I think overall, our hospitality program's killing it. So if you haven't been out, come out, experience that side of the site. They do an awesome summer music series too, with a lot of really great local artists. So you can come out. It is ticketed, but that money really is going back to the artist predominantly. And we make money off y'all having a drink out here. So come out and have a drink during that.
For sure. When is that?
They moved the date on it, so don't quote me on that.
Okay. We'll put it at underneath the link or something.
Yeah, well, we can link the summer music series, and then hospitality's killing it out here. New product releases. That 7-year-old wheated cash strain is going to be awesome. We're also releasing our first experimental whiskey, which is a Vino de Naranja finished, so orange wine, finished rye whiskey.
Different.
It is going to be super tasty. It's been in those casks for when it will be bottled almost a year.
Okay.
So big orange chocolate, like it reminds me of like a chocolate Terry's orange with like peaches in it. Like it's
Wow,
rad.
that's different.
So we did one under an experimental series where we did 2 barrels of it, but it was so successful and the demand was so high for it. We're now going to be taking that national. So those projects are pretty fun. I don't know. I mean, just constantly figuring out like new stuff. I mean, we're working on some like secret new R&D projects that you might see at some point.
Cool.
Continuing to work on our own education, growing and building our team. We just have it's just a lot of positive stuff right now. So,
Just,
yeah.
And with it being smaller, I feel like every person plays a role in it here too. So like like you said earlier, just being able to, it doesn't have to go through so many steps for y'all to do something. So stuff can come out of nowhere for you guys. Like
I mean, some of the best advice we've gotten, like I love that. I always say we're kind of like a loose democratic republic, right? Like, people from any department can make recommendations. Like even on the R&D side, everybody can submit.
Awesome.
And some of the best ideas have not been the R&D team. I think it's about being humble and saying like, even our blending approach, we have a blending team of 5. We're looking at actually growing it next year to 6, just to get some different palate perspective. I don't care if it's my blend. I don't care if it's your blend. I care if it's the best blend. And I think it's our R&D approach is the same. Like, I don't care if it's my idea. I don't care if it's Will's idea. I don't care if it's somebody from the warehouse's idea. It needs to be the best idea.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's like not staying out of your own way and being gracious for any creative idea. I think sometimes, like, I feel like whiskey falls, especially on product strategy, into that kind of like art creative society like idea where, I have a big passion for street art, and I think that comes out of a sense of community and like watching other people work and being like, man, that works, or like there's a lot of collaboration that you don't see in classical fine art.
Mm-hmm.
Classical fine art is like, this is my style, this is
it.
my representation.
Very strict.
Like, it's like, I'm only going to advance myself, often at the detriment of other artists, where like there's other like pop and street art is going to come out of more of a collaborative perspective.
Yeah.
Same with music. I mean, that's always why I'm like drawn to like bluegrass and like folk music and Americana. It's like, whoever wants to step up on stage and jams, welcome to do it. Yeah, it's like we're only going to be better as a result of the totality of our growth.
Yeah.
Where you see other musical avenues and stuff where it's like, I'm going to succeed at the failure of you, which is like so counterintuitive. And I think bourbon's like in that great space, especially with the Kentucky Distillers Association. It's It's like we're going to be better because we're all being better. And like
The community.
I was like, I want bourbon to not eat ourselves. Like I want bourbon to go after Scotch, Irish whiskey,
Yeah.
Canadian whiskey, vodka brands.
Wanna
Like
be
I
the
want to
best,
take their
man.
money.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't want to take bourbon's money. I want
No.
that to get bigger.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You guys also do different. You can rent out this space and stuff. Like
Yeah,
that
so
as well?
we do
For
corporate,
weddings and stuff?
weddings, corporate events. Weddings, definitely reach out
Yeah.
as soon as you think you're going to get married. You know, that wedding, they do an awesome job on the events team. I think we have one of the best event staff in the industry.
Once they booked up with that.
Pretty busy,
solid.
especially if you want a specific weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You better get that specific weekend. You know, there's definitely weekends that are like
No.
the ones
Yeah.
that people all want. But, you know, definitely let them know in advance. Our wedding team I view it as curated.
Mhm.
You know, they're there to help you, support you, and execute your vision in a way that I've never seen. Corporate events are awesome. That's a lot easier for us to do because they're just, you know, your mother-in-law's not going to be there. You're
Lot
like
less chill-
your
a lot
uncle that's
more
not invited
chill,
is not going to
yeah.
show up. Like corporate events are just a lot more laid back, and they do such an exceptional job on the corporate event side.
So you guys do big
yeah.
events, small events, both of them.
Yeah, we'll do small. I mean, with COVID and stuff, we were doing a lot of like elopements. That's it. And if you don't want to invite 200 people out to a wild wedding, just do your elopement out here. Like,
Yeah.
get your pictures,
It's
Get
a
it- pay-
beautiful sight.
pay for your venue, your dress, and your photographer. That's the best wedding advice I got. We paid for the dress and the venue and not the photographer with our wedding, and like, we should have paid for the photographer, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's what you want. That's your members, your wedding, and then go somewhere and have a big party.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you want to be here, we got you covered. If you want to save some money and go somewhere else, you know, that's like my brother's wedding was in one of our buddies' barns. They blew out 3 or 4 kegs before the ceremony. That was the wedding he wanted to have.
Yeah.
You
for
know,
Sure.
so
I've
you-
been to some wild ones, and then I've been to some very conserved ones. and-
Yeah. But yeah, our events team does an awesome job. So if you dig the event side, you know, that's definitely a great place to do an event.
Yeah.
I know in Frankfurt there's a lot of other really great like venues too. So
But this
depends
is a
on what
great
your need
outdoor
are.
event. You get, and you
We have a
still-
large
you
indoor
get a-
space too.
Oh, do you?
So it just depends. That will hold up to like 200-ish guests. So it just depends on what you're looking for and what your budget is.
That's fire.
Yeah.
I think Lyle said he's been to a couple events here, right? Yeah. Both all of them been fire and everything. Yeah. The scenery out here, everybody can't see it right now. This is a beautiful shot right here, but like that way is just amazing, and we're definitely gonna put some
Thank you.
other footage in the podcast and everything about it. Man, you are one of the. I got a mentor that I go through, and we talk a lot about the palate and taste, and I think you are probably one of the most educated people that I've met when it comes to the palate, and just understanding flavor and the chemistry that's happening and everything. I know I'm on a lower level of education when it comes to palate. I'm still learning my palate. I think it's my favorite thing about being human, though. Like,
Well, it also
I love-
changes, which is like the ultimate monkey wrench, right?
It
Like
does.
what you like today might not be what you like in 3 years. Like
100%.
that ebbs and flows over time.
So
I mean,
what
I
got
think of
you
it
into
like,
your
yeah.
palate? Like, what made you be like, you know what, I like this. I like. What was the flavor that was like, I want to experience more with my palate.
I think it's being open-minded and having the right people around you. You know, like if you're around other people who are adventurous and like want to learn and grow. And I was always really into food. Like I grew up and my dad was like really into food. And I grew up and my kind of like mentor in life was a older Italian man who was actually a journalist by trade. And I would hang out with his daughters were my age, and like Nikki, his wife, was like my second mom. And you're always welcome at dinner there, but you have to be like willing to try food, like, and willing to experience new food and willing to travel. And I got to go on some really cool trips with them. And
That's awesome.
I think it just grew a desire to learn and grow and interact with new things. So I think from even an early age, like I was interested in new. So I think I kind of like, you take that and you're like, well, if you're interested in trying new foods, trying new beer, spirits, alcohols, wine was always something I was really into too. Being in restaurants, it was also that because I was in great restaurants, so I had the opportunity to be around good food and
taste some really
good
good
spirits and
stuff,
good
yeah.
cocktails. And then I also realized that in the food and beverage space made me more money. Right? Like if I
'Cause
could
you-
if I could
no.
speak in an educated manner about a recommendation that wasn't simply like, oh, what wine do you like here? I'm like, I don't know, I don't drink wine. That's my biggest pet peeve in restaurants. I'm like, bro, I'm the type where like if I think you know what you're doing, like I'm like, drive, take me on a journey.
Yeah.
I don't even want to pick. Like you just do it. What meal? If you were sitting in this restaurant, you
What-
know the
what is
food
the
better than me.
combination?
You know the
Yeah.
wine better than me. You know the spirits better than me. You do it. Take me on the journey, baby. Let's
Yeah.
go.
I love that.
And I think that's what I learned in restaurants was like if you're able to do that, you're able to make more money.
Yeah.
Especially when you build that trust with a consumer. Like, I mean, I think of like, I love my wife and me. The only friction we have in our relationship is we're both absolutely horrible at picking food. Either of us. Like if somebody
We
would just
went through this before.
if somebody could just show up at our house and bring us food, that'd be great.
It would. Yeah.
That'd be great.
I
And it's
get that.
both of us. It's like
Yeah.
I'm super indecisive. I'm like, what about this? No. What about this? No. She'll be like, what about this? I'm like, I'm not feeling it. Like, because it's so hard to make a decision because we now have so many choices in our life.
Yeah.
And especially with young kids, we're making decisions all day long.
Oh my God.
All day long, I'm making decisions.
I'm better at making decisions on what my
Yep.
kids eat than
Yep.
what I eat.
I'm making decisions all day long at
Yeah.
work. I want to just be taken on a journey.
I feel
And
you.
I think I got into my palate development because I learned the more I knew about wine, spirits,
The more you got paid.
I was having better financial outcomes, right? And then I also realized I kind of dug it, right? Like when you're getting to try this new wine, you're like, wow, that's awesome. And then you're like kind of working, and it's work. I mean, like from a palate development standpoint, it's like any career. Like if you're not doing triangle blinds and you're not doing 5 sets and you're not doing these activities that are going to sharpen your palate, you're not going to the easiest hack to get good at your palate is all the words that we use are chemical reactions, but you're trying to connect them to your memory.
Right.
So when I'm saying like, oh, I taste vanilla, or I taste like, cocoa nib, or I taste pine nuts, if you've never had those things, you don't know what
You don't even know what
the
it is.
chemical doesn't fire and connect.
Yeah.
So go to Whole Foods or go to your like
I'm a huge smeller too.
co-op fan. Yeah, go smell stuff.
I like smell
Go-
everything.
Go to go to Sage or Wilson Center Store and go smell stuff. Like
go
so
to
if
the
you're
herb
saying like,
section
hey,
and
this
just
is
smell.
basil, this is tarragon, this is like those things are all gonna build your memory. So when you're having a chemical reaction, you're able to place it. So when I'm saying I get pine nuts, you're gonna get your brain's firing on the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of my favorite things for palate development is like trying a peach, trying a dried peach, trying a stewed peach, trying a baked peach. Those are different peaches.
Looky there. You got my brain working. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't think I've ever had a stewed peach.
Pears, yeah. Like just experiencing new things just builds your language, right? And I think it's like anything. It's like art. It's like music. It's like TV. It's like if you only watch one show, and then you get sat and you sit across that person at dinner, and I'm like, "What do you like?" And they're like, "I only watch The Bachelor. I only watch The Office." I'm like, "Oh, do you like anything else?" And they're like, "No."
No,
You're like,
this is it.
"Cool. This is about to be a really intense conversation."
I like my whiskey dry, and I like my shows just one.
Yeah, it's like I like people who are adventurous. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, I read everything. I read nonfiction. I read fiction. I read like this year, like
That's my brother. He reads everything. He gets on me because I'm like a huge like non-fiction reader, and I don't have too many fictional books that I've read. I just picked up Lord of the Flies again.
it builds your repertoire and education and knowledge, and
It
that
does.
stuff just makes you able to have conversations with people about where they're passionate about.
Yep. More well-rounded in conversation for sure.
And it doesn't sound like it in this podcast, but like, listen when people are excited about something. I'm weirdly like I have a great memory, and if somebody's passionate about something, I'm all in. I'm
Go.
here.
Let's go. Yeah.
I've learned a lot in this career because I've been around people who are really educated in specific perspectives and themselves really talented. Like if you're around other talented people, like it's going to help you. Like I don't even consider myself talented. I consider myself a good listener, and I consider myself a good like kind of symbiote, right? Like I'm going to be around people with talent, and I'm going to see the actions that they're doing that is what they're talented in, and I'm going to try to be like, can I just suck some of that up?
Yeah. Just be
Like,
a sponge to it.
yeah, just when you have the opportunity to be cognizant of it too. Like I think of any career or mastery of something, if you watch somebody doing something and they're slaying it, watch them do it.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
half of it has to, like you said, being a good listener. And even if you don't know as much, you should know the most in the room. If you know the most in the room, you probably need to get in a different room.
Yeah.
But it's okay to be the least educated person in the room if you're a good listener. If you're not the best listener and you're the least educated, you might have a little bit of a problem. But to sit down and humble yourself and just be like, okay, I'm just gonna pay attention to what these guys are doing because I have a passion for this, but they're obviously more educated than me, so I need to
And ask all questions. Don't ask good questions. People always think you got to ask like
question.
Yeah, and I think of like Amanda went to law school, and it's like you get these gunners, like these kids that. My biggest pet peeve is being asked a question that you know the answer to show me that you know the answer to that question. It grinds my gears. That's
the alley-oop
yeah,
to
like
yourself,
yeah, they're like they already know it, and they're like because they're like trying to prove and connect that they know something. And for me, like my favorite questions are bad questions when somebody's like, "Hey, I got a question." I'm like, "What is it?" Because you're showing you care, like you're showing you want to learn, and that you're taking something that you don't know anything about, and you want to educate yourself. Right. And yeah, I always say, dude, if you're in, like, I am constantly humbled by how much smarter our staff is than me.
Man, that's awesome.
I'm just pretty. No, I'm
you
just
are
playing.
super educated. No,
but, dude,
when I'm around you, I'm like, this is one of the most educated people that I know. Like,
I just know a lot about everything because I listen when people who are really smart and really experts at something talk about it.
Right.
And, that's like, just ask bad questions. Ask for clarification. If you don't understand something, ask for clarification. Mm-hmm. Say, like, hey, I'm hearing this. Is this right?
Right.
Like, right. I mean, that's like, I used to really struggle, like, I'm dyslexic, so I've always struggled with, like, the financial side of stuff, because I never thought I was good at math in school. I'm good at math in my head, but the second I have to write it down, I'm going to get reversals. So, like, it's different. But I think my biggest challenge in the industry is, like, we have the best CFO, and, like, listening to him talk, it's like, okay, and I'll be like, now explain that. Or like talking to your sales guys and like understand like margin, ROI. Like, think about your cuts. You can only cut so many people's hair in like in a time period. And like one of my buddies has a shop in Lex, and they converted to like minutes per service and like understanding that financial better.
That's where I'm at with it too. Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well if these things both take 60 minutes and one of them only pays you 20 and the other pays you 50,
that makes sense.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like understanding, your time and understanding the way you invest your time and understanding, if this costs X on this bottle, like a component, like, does that actually increase the value of something, or is it just for show? It's like learning the financials of something. It's been really cool, and it's like it's not something I'm good at, like
something that you're willing to learn,
but you want to learn it. And if you want to get better at business, that's something that there's not a lot of great like education out there unless you went to school for it. Mm-hmm. That's always something I wish as a community we had better access to, like good accounting and business minds. 100%. Like, whether that's a pro bono or has a paid component, but especially from the entrepreneurship level, like having a way for you to be like, hey, you have a good idea and you have a good business and you're good at it, but how do you make it like financially resonate? That's something even in our personal life. Like I'm known for being like a bad spender. Like I'm the issue in our house. Like I'm gonna buy that.
Yeah.
Like,
I get it.
And it's like trying to, now it's like, okay, well, what does buying that give you? Or like, trying to understand like that stuff.
To sit down and be like, okay, is this a purchase that I need right now? I know as a business owner and an entrepreneur, I really wish that there was more financial literacy classes.
Yes, 100%. I wish they should be taught in high school.
I think it should be required. It should be it shouldn't be an elective or anything. You should have to pass this class in high school in order to graduate. Because,
it should be, what is insurance?
Oh my God!
Like how do your utilities utilities bills work, dude?
If we don't do this here, if we don't restructure school, I feel like in the next 15, 20 years to like be like that, we are gonna have a really hard time.
How does your mortgage work? How does rent work?
This is all stuff I'm still learning. Like, I don't have a mortgage on anything. I don't own anything yet. I just went through my first time trying to purchase something, and it's
wild.
It is insane. And then a bidding war happened, and next thing I know, it went from like $250 to $4 something, and I was like, there still needs to be $100,000 into the building. Like, it blew my mind. And
when people get connected, especially that stuff, like part of that class should be like, hey, if the numbers don't make sense, you need to get, and you're not like thick rich, you need to get past your heart. Because I think like, especially in housing, people get like really connected. Like, this is my dream home. If
my dream neighborhood.
If you can't afford your dream home, that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, let's get you where you can build to that opportunity, but it doesn't always have to be right now.
Just because it's your dream home doesn't mean you have to make it by your 30s.
And it's going to be your dream stress.
Yeah,
If you get underwater in something that you can't afford, like then you're going to get into a point where every day you're not able to even appreciate where you
won't enjoy it
live.
at all.
You're going to be stressed out about how you're going to pay that note.
Yeah, when
So
your
yeah,
dream becomes more of a stress than a passion, you're kind of putting yourself in a hard spot for your passion.
Yeah.
You kill yourself out of it over time.
yeah.
So, man, this has been an awesome episode and just interview and everything, man. And I appreciate you
It's been a
taking
pleasure.
the time out, man, and giving us this beautiful space to come out to. And I got to give you your flowers before we get off here because, you know, we met just through business and everything, and you came down to my barbershop, and I'd like. We really got to get our kids together because they're like the same energy level. But
And a mess, yeah.
with
Yeah.
who you are as a person and the go that you have about yourself, and like I'm sure you prayed for times like this and asked for times like this, and to be as busy as you are. And I think as entrepreneurs, we get into the motion and then we get deep into it and we forget like this is exactly what we asked for, and you wear everything very well. Like, I see you still spend time with your family.
Yeah.
You balance out work and family, and it's a hard thing to do.
I think it's a hard thing to do. I think, for me, it was resetting your priorities. Like, I love this place. Like, this is first and foremost. I'm so blessed to be here and to be in the position I'm in with this company. I will say, I used to only be about business, but now it's like having 2 kids. I'm first and foremost family.
Family.
And I love that, Will, our owner, I've always said, Will will check in me like once a year, be like, still good, still having fun, like everything cool. And because he knows, from the first day I was hired, I always say, if I'm not having fun or Amanda tells me to leave, I'm out. Because like what I care about most for myself is my family. Like that's one.
The foundation for you.
And the day it's not working up for us as a family is the day I'm gone. But it's been almost 8 years now and we still haven't had that moment. And I hope to not have that moment. And I think that's what's cool about it is also being real, where if it's like, if I'm not learning, I'm not growing, I'm not having fun, there's plenty of things you can do to not have those things.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think I'm just in a very fortunate position. And I think, being able to be surrounded by great staff and having 2 really cool kids that are a mess. People don't tell you, like, people are both undersell and oversell parenting at the same time. It is the hardest thing you will ever do. It is the coolest thing you will ever do.
It is.
It is the most brutal thing you will ever do.
Yeah.
It is the funnest thing you'll ever do. And it can be all that on the same day.
And you think you got it, and right when you think you got it and you understand it, it will throw a loop. Parenthood will throw a loophole in there for you. So
And it's fast. It is weirdly fast. Like we have a 3-year-old.
My son's 13 now, and my oldest son, and I blinked, and he turned 13. And I tell everybody with kids, especially younger kids, like, you only get so much of that time. That imaginative, super just kiddish. I get it. When you're off a hard day's worth of work and your kid wants to show you the same thing 500 times, looking at it 400 times can be frustrating sometimes. You're going to miss that one day. And one day your kid will be, you'll walk in the house and instead of being, Daddy, you'll walk in and be like, what's up? Man,
I'm not ready for that, man. We're gonna have to start adopting or something at that point. I gotta reset that.
When my oldest son just started calling me Dad, it was like, he said it the first day and I was like, what was that? He's like, what? I was like, you just called me Dad. He's like, what do you want me to call you, Dad? And I was like, I'm having a daddy. At this point, he's like 7 though. I was like, I get it, but he was my only child at the time, so I was like, until I had this second child, I didn't realize how old my first child was. And it gave me the realization, like, oh, I got a teenager now. So
dude, our 3-year-old like talks.
He does, bro.
He calls me by my first name too. He'll be like, "You're my Brett guy." I'm like, "Thanks, buddy."
He knows tractors. He knows cranes.
The things he's into, he knows what. Yeah, he knows the things he's into.
And he's you can tell he's gonna be an adventure kid.
He already is. He's full speed, for better or for worse.
Well, Brett, man, it's been an honor to be out
here
at Castle and Key, and like I said, we really appreciate you having us out here and doing this with us, man.
Well, thanks for having me. You guys are welcome anytime. We're excited for the podcast and excited for all the work you guys are doing. So
for sure, we'll let you know when we put it out. And for everybody who hasn't been out here, if you come to Frankfurt, Buffalo Trace is not the only distillery here. Great one, and it has a lot of history out there. Like you said, Woodford is the other way.
Well, is Three Boys down across from Buffalo Trace now? Did they officially move?
I don't know. I know they got their building and everything. And I
Yeah.
know they've been working on it. I'm not sure if they've officially moved, but they'll be in town soon too. And but come check this place out. Like you said, if you got an hour to kill and you guys just want to come out for a little bit and check it out,
Go to
Wednesday through Saturday.
OCD down here. Go
Oh.
check out David at OCD.
Yeah. So OCD number 5 is probably that was one of my favorites there for quite some time. Probably still is in my top 5 for real.
Yeah.
And it's a smaller one, right?
Yeah, it's not a huge facility, but he makes really good whiskey. Go
Yeah,
check it out.
High quality, small place. So until next time, guys, this is Culture Up Podcast. We appreciate it. And make sure y'all tune in to the next episode.
Cheers.
Yes, sir. Brett, man, much appreciated. What time is it?
Oh man, we are good on time actually. It's a miracle.
That was a good time. What time did we start? Like 3:15 or something like that?
We just rolled over an hour 30, and I started maybe 10 minutes before we actually.
Cool. Perfect timing. No clock. Good hands. Whew.
They get weirdly back there.
Now, is there one more